So now it's recording. Does someone know how to send it straight to YouTube?
So, Miss Gibson, I emailed the gentleman a while ago, and I never heard back about the YouTube. So I don't have the YouTube station. Are we able to proceed with just recording it for right now until I can figure out who can give me the YouTube for the school? Because I don't have that information. And my media specialist is out on FMLA right now.
Does no one on the Go team who was on the team last year know the information about the YouTube?
No, the YouTube was automatically set up last year from Barbara Shea's computer. Ms. Fambro, do you by any chance know how she set that up?
Her Zoom was connected to it. I don't know how. But
Ms.
I do
Walker?
know that our login, like the school login, is the school's login, regardless of Barbara Shea being here or not. I just don't have the login. But I do
Yeah,
know
I
that
don't
we can
have it.
get
I
it.
don't have it either. And my YouTube, my Zoom doesn't feed into a YouTube page. Because we didn't have that at the organizational meeting either.
Okay, so would our options be to reschedule this until we find
No, I
how
mean,
to...
you guys can proceed, but the recordings won't be saved. So you'll need to figure out what, how to get them streamed.
So the recordings, like from the last meeting, the first one that we did, it's saved in the it's saved on Zoom because we were able, I believe Ms. Clark Grant was able to post that to our website.
Right, but the record retention for Go Team documents and recordings is 5 years. Zoom, the cloud, keeps recordings for about maybe 90 days. Okay. And so what will happen is that the recordings will be deleted and you will lose access to them.
Quick question, would we be able to download the recordings from the Zoom account and upload it onto
the YouTube page?
So that way they can stay there?
Right.
And what's the guy's, do you know off the top of your head the guy's name again? I'll email him tonight or tomorrow to see if I can get him to get that information because I don't expect my media specialist back until the end of October.
No, but I'll just email Barbara Shea. It's not a problem.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I'll copy you on the email so you all can be in contact.
Okay.
So you can make sure you have that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My last question, since we started recording a couple minutes ago, should we redo the call to order and establishment of a quorum so it's on record?
Yeah.
All right, I'll make it brief. Good evening. Welcome to Hollis Innovation Academy's Go Team meeting, where we will follow the agenda as it has been emailed to you and publicly noted. I would like to remind everyone that this is a meeting of the Go Team. Only members of the team may participate in the discussion. Any members of the public present are here to quietly observe. For the members of Go Team, please identify yourself when you speak. I am pleased to call this meeting of the Hollis Go Team to order at 5:39 p.m. Our first order of business is to call roll. Will the secretary now call roll?
Yes, I will. Dr. Shakir?
Present.
Billy Walker? Carla Moore? Sharice Kennedy?
Present.
Chelsea Baker? Present. Aisha Fambro?
Present.
Javier Torres?
Present.
Mariel Hicks? Ebony Scott?
Present.
Thank you.
This team will only be able to take official action if a quorum is present. Ms. Baker, Is there a quorum present today?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. The agenda has been emailed to you, and I am now going to share my screen so that way everyone can see the agenda as well. Please let me know if you see the agenda on the screen.
Yes.
This was provided to you and copies are here projected. Are there any changes to the agenda? Oh, this is the last meeting minutes, not the agenda.
Yeah,
My
I
apologies.
was gonna say these are minutes.
Share the wrong screen. Where is it? Here it is. You see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
A second?
I second it.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye so the secretary can record your vote. All opposed, please say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Please say abstain. All right, thank you. We will now review and approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. The meeting minutes have been posted and is now projected on my screen. The minutes have been provided to you now. Are there any corrections? If there are no further corrections, may I have a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second it.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions, please say abstain. All right, thank you very much. I am now going to share the presentation. Our first action item in the agenda is our school strategic plan. Do I hear a motion to approve this item? I have it projected here so we could review it as well. This was our school strategic plan that we made with last year with Barbara Shea. Our first three were our focus on reading and mathematics performance of special education students, focus on reading and mathematics of all Hollis students, and develop a literacy and mathematics culture. Do I hear a motion to approve this item?
Hi, Mr. Torres. So you guys don't have to approve it because it's already been approved. Yeah. All you're doing you're reviewing it so that the people who were not on the Go team last year are, abreast of
everything that was going on.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for the correction. All right, so some of the other things that we had spoken about was leveraging wraparound services, improving leadership opportunities within a school, retain our top performing staff, provide engagement opportunities for families, and making sure that we are supporting families. Here was our strategic plan priority ranking. The highest will be at top, lower will be on the bottom. Our first was to improve ELA proficiency across all grade levels with a focus on K-5 due to state designation and grades 6 and 8. This is very important because right now our elementary is what is on the state list. We really want to focus there. And as well as when they get to middle school, we are having those same students. If we catch them early, give them the supports they need, they will be great in middle school as well. The second was to improve math proficiency across all grade levels with a focus on grades K through 5 due to state designation and grades 6 and 8. Third was to improve school-wide attendance. Data for the school year of 24-25 was 48%. Our goal is to increase the school-wide attendance to at least 65% during this 25 and 26 school year. If the kids aren't here, we cannot get them to be where they need to be. Implement students' school-wide behavior management plan to address student behaviors, but also provide an opportunity to teach students new strategies to address conflicts. So I do know that Dr. Shakir and Mr. Matthews have implemented a positive behavior support system here in the school. So we are trying to have a school-wide management plan. So here's where we're connecting the school strategic plan and continuous improvement plan. Our strategic priority of ELA and structured literacy connects to our SMART goal here of increasing a 7% number of students in grades 3 to 5 achieving proficient or higher on the English language arts milestones by the end of grade assessment. This is the way, over on the key indicator section, is how we will get there. We have implemented collaborative plannings, weekly content focus walks, weekly data collections, weekly principal meetings with state representative to review school-wide progress towards short-term action plans. We also have our priority in math, very similar, a 7% increase in grades 3 to 5 in the Georgia Milestones end of grade assessment. We have the same steps in language arts as we do in math. For attendance, we want this students absent less than 10% of enrolled days will, and my apologies as my screen is cutting this off right here. But we are improving our school attendance through bi-weekly whole child meetings and monitoring of student data. So now we're gonna move on to our discussion items in our agenda. The first discussion will be data.
Okay. Did you want me to do this part, Mr. Torres?
Yes, Dr. Shakir, yeah, do you mind covering this as you more?
Okay, so to all of the members on the Go team. So as you know, we took the MAP assessments at the beginning of the school year, and we will take the second assessment, I believe, in December. But looking at the preliminary data for Hollis as a whole, and then I also have data that shows a comparison with the Washington cluster as a whole. Our fall 25 MAP results, and I pulled the results for students that scored in the developing and above range. So when we look at Hollis, we had 48% of our students when we just took the MAP at the beginning of the year scored in the beginning level of performance, which is indicated by red on the chart. We had 39% of our school-wide students, and that's looking at the entire school, scored in yellow, which would be representative of developing. And then we had 12% of our students scored in the proficient area, which equates to about 101 students school-wide that took the test are currently slated for proficient level of performance. We have around 335 students, which represents that 39% that scored in the developing range. And then we had 420 students that scored in the beginning level of performance.
Principal Shakir, this is Chandra. I'm not for the Washington cluster is saying the number of exams is 868, and for Hollis is saying 868. And so I didn't know if that was like a typo.
No, this is not a typo. I didn't create this graph. This graph came from APS Graphs. So when we go into APS Graphs and we pull the data for a map, and pulled it up for Hollis, this is straight. This is a screenshot straight from the district's APS Graphs.
How many students do y'all have at Hollis?
At Hollis, we have 624.
Okay, you may want to reach out to the data person, because if there are 624 kids, and is the map is that K8?
Yeah, when you look at the data on APS Graphs, it's pulling all of the data for K8. Yes.
Okay, well, I'll lift it, but you may want to just lift that too, because it may not be correct. I don't know even either at the cluster level or the school level, but the number shouldn't be the same.
I mean, I can lift it to my area soup, but it's not data that I made up. It's data that came from APS. So I'm pulling this from the APS Graphs. So I'm not sure why that's showing that same number, but that's the data that's represented. George, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna move to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide talks about the GMAS performance, which is something that I have to work with our state representative on. So when we look at our GMAS performance and we look at it, we have two slides. We have one for the elementary and one for the middle. And this, Ms. Gibson, this is our school-based Excel spreadsheet. So this is not from APS Graphs. But when we look at the ELA performance for 3rd through 5th, we actually have the number of students that performed at each proficiency band, as well as the overall weighted amount for the content mastery. So when we look at 3rd grade, we had, it looks like altogether between 3rd and 5th grade, we had a total of 112 students that scored in the beginning level of performance on last spring's administration of the Georgia Milestones. And so what's representative of that in 3rd is that we had 30 3rd graders score in the beginning level of performance. With 4th grade, we had 44 students, and then 5th grade, we had 38. And then when we look at our students that scored in the developing range, we had 14 3rd graders hit developing, 18 of our 4th graders, and 18 of our 5th graders. And when we look at our proficient students who passed the Georgia Milestones on the first attempt, looking at grade level 3, 3rd grade, we had 8 students were proficient. 8 students in 4th grade were proficient, and then we had 8 students in 4th grade, and then 7 students in 5th grade that scored at the proficient level. And then when we look at our distinguished level performers, we had 2 3rd grade students reach distinguished, 1 4th grade, and we had no 5th graders on this last test in administration. And so when we look at the total number of test takers altogether for last year's administration, we had 188 students between grades 3 through 5, which represents 54 3rd graders, 71 4th, and then of course 63 5th graders. When we switch down to math for 3rd through 5th, in 3rd grade, we had 16 students that scored at the beginning level of performance. 34 students in 4th grade, and 46 in 5th. And then when we had our developing students, we had 22 3rd graders, 27 4th graders, 16 5th graders. And when we look at our proficient level of our proficient students, we have 14 students in 3rd, 10 in 4th, and 1 in 5th. And when we look at our students that scored in the distinguished level, we had 2 3rd graders last year meet distinguished. We didn't have any for 4th, and we didn't have any for 5th. And with Georgia Milestones for 5th grade, science actually counts. And so with our science scores and science counts for 5th grade only, we have 43 students scoring the beginning level for science, 12 scored in developing, 7 students in proficient, and 1 student scored in distinguished. And we had 63 students total that took the science assessment last year for our elementary. So those are our current Georgia Milestone results. And then the next slide, Mr. Torres will show our middle school results for 6th through 8th. So when we look at our 6th graders, 6th through 8th grade bands, looking at ELA first, in 6th grade, we had 42 students scored beginning, 17 of our students scored developing, and 10 of our students scored proficient, and we had 2 students score in the distinguished category. For 7th grade, and looking at ELA, we had 34 beginning level students, 19 developing, 15 proficient, and 0 distinguished. And for 8th grade, we had 32 beginning, 20 developing, 13 proficient, and 0 distinguished. Altogether, we had 204 students last year take the test for ELA that represents our middle school students. When we switched to math for middle school, looking at 6th grade, we had 35 students beginning, 32 developing, 3 students proficient, and 0 students scored in the distinguished category. When we look at 7th grade, we had 30 students beginning level, 31 for developing, 6 for proficient, and then we had 1 student scoring the distinguished round. And then when we look at 8th grade, we had 24 students in beginning level, 22 in developing, 16 proficient, and we had 3 students score in distinguished. And then when we look at the middle school side of Georgia Milestones, students are assessed in 8th grade, and their scores count in the areas of social studies as well as science. So we calculated that percentage as well. And so when we look at social studies, we had 30 students scored in the beginning level of performance, 25 students scored developing, 10 students scored proficient, and 0 students scored distinguished. And we had a total representation of 65 scholars that took the social studies test. And when we look at science, we had 33 students scored beginning, 16 developing, 14 proficient, 2 distinguished, which represents a total of 65 students altogether. And so that altogether comprises our Georgia Milestone scores for both the elementary and the middle school for last year's performance. So when we looked at the data and just kind of looking at some glows and grows overall, and looking at this just kind of in comparison to with current data with maps, some glows. The first glow I said was the test was taken early, and this is really referencing MAP. So we took that test early in the year so that we are able to better identify students who may need additional support as we start the year off and can make those intentional moves for students. Another glow was that we had a 2% reduction in beginning level students and this was on the MAP assessment. So students in the fall of 24-25 school year, it was 50% of students were scoring in the beginning level of performance. So when we look at the comparisons with this year, we have 48%. So we had a reduction of students that scored in beginning level. So those students either moved to developing, proficient, or distinguished across the math performance for this year. And then we also saw growth based off of milestones this year across grade levels. So there's definitely progress that was made. Specifically at Hollis, we had 3rd and 8th grade were recognized for the growth that was made. So that's definitely something that we want to celebrate. When we look at grow opportunities as a school collectively, looking at the data trends, the data shows opportunities to strengthen school-wide Tier 1 instruction across core content areas. And you can really see that being representative because we're really, when you look at the number of beginning level students and developing level students, we were almost kind of like half and half in some instances across grade levels. So that just means that there's just opportunities to continue to work with teachers to strengthen that Tier 1 instruction that's happening. Another growth opportunity is when we look at fall to fall in comparison of students who met their MAP growth targets. And MAP traditionally is used as an indicator to let schools know and school-based teams know whether or not students are on track for really moving towards meeting proficiency on the end of grade summative assessment of Georgia milestones. But when we looked at our fall to fall comparison from last year to this year, we had 54% of our students did not meet their MAP growth targets. So one of the things that we want to really focus on as a school this year is making sure that we're intentional with looking at student data and really trying to give students those interventions that they need to kind of close some of those achievement gaps. And then also when we looked at the fall to fall data from last year to this year in comparison, 52% of students did not meet their MAP reading goals. I'm sorry, the 54% represents the MAP math goals. And then the last bullet point represents the percentage of students school-wide that did not meet their MAP reading growth targets from last year's testing administration. And so when we think about the impact and we ask, are we on target to successfully accomplish our priorities? We have work to do as a school. The one thing that I will say is that with the school being federally identified as a comprehensive school improvement school, we have short-term action plans. And so each quarter, and our action plans run over a 3-month period. And so that gives us as an opportunity as a school-based instructional leadership team to break down and kind of chunk some of the goals and targets around math and ELA instruction and specific look-forwards and areas of opportunity to strengthen teacher professional development. And so we gauge that progress in 3-month increments. And we have our first short-term action plan report out in October, actually on the 20th. So either by the time we have our next Go Team meeting or that meeting thereafter, we can actually have a discussion around how we performed as a school with our short-term action plan targets for our first step, as well as we can talk about some of the shifts or adjustments that would be necessary to make sure that we're moving in the right direction to meet our overarching school improvement goals of increasing school-wide performance by at least 7% in the area of ELA and math for all of our students based off of our 25-26 school improvement plan.
Thank you.
And so I think we turn this part back to you, Mr. Torres, I believe.
Okay. So as a team, what are some things that we notice when we're going over this data?
Well, I noticed that we have a lot of students in the developing category, so we really need to take care with them this year so that we can move more of them into that developing area.
Agreed. Anyone else notice anything?
Yes, one second. I was trying to pull back up the
I
data.
can go back.
No, I have it. It's fine. But if you put it up, that's cool too. So I noticed that it appears that the 8th grade math, the 7th grade math, and looks like the 3rd grade math pretty much had the most proficient students, proficient and above students. And I guess wondering, I'm kind of moving a little fast, but a wondering could be, how are we leveraging those teachers and the strategies that they use to, I guess, build the capacity of the other teachers in the building. So whoever those teachers were, what did they do to get such a stark difference? Specifically, the 8th grade teacher, and I'm aware that she's not there anymore, but she had 16 proficients and 3 distinguished. And you don't see that in many other, hold on one second. You don't see that in
Across the other grade levels.
Yeah, no. Ms. Fambro, it went on mute on you.
Go back to the elementary slide, Mr. Torres.
Did it went on mute? Yeah, I'm on
Yeah.
my phone. I'm sorry.
Well, you had 10. So no, 3rd grade. I don't know who did 3rd grade math last year, but they had quite a bit. And then you also had 10 proficient in
Fourth grade as
fourth
well.
grade.
Yes.
Yeah.
And seventh grade had quite a few too, but I was pointing out like the most.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
just like, oh, and seventh grade ELA, I meant to say, not math, by the way. So eighth grade math, seventh grade ELA, and eighth grade ELA was comparable, I guess, but I was just pointing out like those big numbers.
Very high.
Yeah. And like what did they do that no one else did? Or what are they doing that other people can do? Because it might not be that they're not doing it, but maybe they can do it more. But just that really stood out, specifically that eighth grade, that 16 proficient and 3 distinguished.
Yes.
That stands out quite a lot.
And one of the things that Ms. Fambro mentioned is Ms. Flowers, the previous eighth grade teacher. She is no longer here at Hollis. However, she has offered her services, like if she could come volunteer and things like that. So leveraging those connections that we still have, and bringing that knowledge back into the building, I think could be a good step forward to making sure we continue this growth. Are there any wonderings?
I think most of the teachers would wonder, like, what is the exact number? I know we mentioned like the 7% increase, but like what amount of students does that come to for teachers to actually put like a name to it, quantify it, right? 7% could be 5 kids for one grade, because I think fourth or fifth grade is one of our biggest grades, is one of them, right? So 7% for a fifth grade teacher might not be the same amount of students for an eighth grade teacher, if that makes sense. So I wonder how many students per grade level does that actually quantify to be?
And then based on our school's trend data and MAP assessments and end of the year assessments, which student subgroups and grade levels showed the most significant gaps or unexpected trends? So I know for me, one thing I quickly noticed as a math teacher was fifth grade math was our lowest. Now, that means that we're going to have to be very intentional in providing our sixth grade students, because that is the same group of students, with the proper support so that way they could continue to grow and meet the standards for sixth grade this year. Anyone else notice anything else?
Yes, that was a huge one. And also fourth grade, if you go back to the elementary slide, fourth grade ELA, had 44 students in beginning, which means that those are fifth grade students this year. So we may want to provide extra support there for the students, because fourth grade ELA and fifth grade math look pretty similar.
Yeah.
And so those will be our current sixth graders and fifth graders.
And the same is true for, if you look at fourth grade math, so you had 34 students that were in beginning. So those are students that if they all return, they're sitting in fifth grade now. So that would be like an indicator. And with fifth grade being departmentalized, that the teacher will probably want to identify and see who those kids are, because they might need extra small group instruction.
I agree.
Because they probably have some gaps that we need to close up.
And I was also wondering about our teachers aware, because like we all look at the data, right? But I'm wondering, do teachers know that we also have to keep the proficiency we have, right? And also add to that. So for instance, if Aisha Fembro, wasn't proficient, but I go down to beginning, that counts as going backwards, right? So even if you add on those 5 kids per your grade level, if you lose some proficients, that's not necessarily an increase. So I wonder if that is taken into account when teachers are, I guess, involved in data discussions. Like, you also have to keep the ones you have and add on to it.
Yeah, now that the data, I guess, has now been lifted from the embargo, we can now start to kind of talk to teachers about that Georgia Milestones data. And as they start to have their data meetings, I do agree they need to start identifying, putting a name to the face of, you know, we used to call them bubble kids. Which kids can we push over? Which kids were very close?
Yep.
Even looking at those developing kids, they really need to look at the GMAS scores to see how close were they,
Yes.
and be intentional around kind of grouping those kids to see if they can maximize on at least trying to move some of those kids over to the next proficiency band.
Yes, I agree.
Same.
Now, for the next question, based on our school's trend data from MAP assessments, milestones, and other indicators, are there specific trends that require more focused attention? I know there was a couple things I noticed. So first thing in middle school, I did notice both for ELA and math, beginning students was continually decreasing each grade level. However, I am curious to see what percentages that is, as there's different number of students per grade level as well. In the inverse, there was an increase in math for beginning students in elementary school.
That
So
was
those
my
are
same observation.
Yeah, those are going to be like the points that I think we need to be very intentional about. We need to have very honest conversations with our teachers, with our families. And I think we need to be very reflective on how to make sure that one student who is proficient in 5th grade hopefully can move over to distinguish in 6th grade or remain proficient. We're going to have honest conversations of what are our own strengths and weaknesses as educators. And when we have these data collaboration meetings, being very open and knowing how to improve our own instructional strategies.
Because I think, because another noticing too is when you look at, so like science, so we know science is through the lens of informational text, right? So when we look at the 5th grade science, particularly with 43 students last year scoring in the beginning level, and then you look at the 5th graders in ELA last year, 38. So that's not that far off. So that to me is an indication that, okay, maybe there might be some opportunities for ELA teachers to talk with science teachers, like what are some clear strategies they think they might be able to implement that can help close some of those gaps on the ELA side, which would allow students to make it a little bit easier for them to access that more complex informational text in science, so that you can reduce the number of beginning level students and increase the number of, increase the students that are moving into development and beyond. It's something that I just looked at and saw.
That was a great observation.
So I think a good thing is that now that that data is kind of released from embargo, I do agree with you that we probably do need to go ahead and start having those conversations with teachers about the data. And I think that it would be important for teachers to maybe give them some time to kind of look at the data, analyze it, come up with their own assumptions, and then kind of work with grade level teams on identifying the kids that they think they want to move, and maybe even having teachers kind of commit to some kids. Okay, in my class, I know I can move 6 kids. And these are the 6 that I can move, and you keep your hand on the pulse of those kids this year to see if they're moving into the next performance band. Might be a way to for teachers to empower them. You know what I mean?
Yes, I love that idea. And Torres, before we move on, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. The numbers add up, so that's not the issue here. But is this graph, Dr. Shakir, saying that 85 students in math from 6 through 8 were developing, and 56 were developing in ELA 6 through 8? I'm just making sure I read.
Let me just add those numbers up. I think, yes, hold on one second. Let me just add.
I think it adds up. The math wasn't a problem. I was just going to say that's a stark difference between ELA and math.
No, that's exactly what it is. It's adding them all up across the grade band for each of those category areas.
Because even when you think about the beginning, it's 89 in math, but 108 in ELA. ELA has more proficient students, which counts for more points, but that that development beginning in ELA and math in middle school is like, so it's such a stark difference. I'm curious of how So when in math, you kind of have to read, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so why does math have less beginning students and ELA has more? Like that's a huge wonder, and I've never saw this data in this light. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of interesting that you would think the reverse, right? Because you have to read
Mhm.
and do computations in
Mhm.
math, but that's just interesting to see.
Now, knowing how the test looks, I'm wondering if a lot of those students, maybe we're getting those level 1 questions that are more computational, because the milestones does have a mix. Yes, it's not many just computational questions or many just graphing, but they may have picked the questions and focused on the ones that require less reading. Which those are all conversations we could have in data chats and wonderings we can have.
Mhm.
Another thing that I wanted to point out is this goes back to what Dr. Shakir was saying for elementary school. I'm seeing a similar trend in the social studies and science being matching up with the amount of beginning students in 8th grade language arts. Same thing goes to the developing, is around the same number for the developing and language arts as well. So making sure that we are providing those instructional strategies in language arts and bridging our content areas, I think will be essential.
And I think a last point that I would like to add is that if you look at the data as a whole, um, it would be good to maybe pose a question to grade level teams as we meet with them for collaborative planning. Are we as a school, is there a culture of teaching to the middle? Or is there a culture of making sure that we are differentiating instruction to meet the needs? Because if you're looking at this performance, I wonder if teachers are kind of just teaching assignments that are teaching to the middle base of their students versus really like going into classrooms, you really see clear groups, you see differentiated groups in action, and you see where teachers are kind of digging into that map data or progress learning or whatever tool we use to assess students to kind of gives you some baseline information of where student deficiencies are, so that teachers are planning activities to kind of close those gaps while they're also teaching that grade level standard, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so that means that we would have to work with teachers to shift the culture. It's almost like being in an environment where you see personalized learning in action, where you see all these kids doing the different activities that kind of meets their needs. But we know that we have to teach certain standards that kids will be assessed on. But we need to begin to really have conversations with teachers around making sure that they are very intentional around doing those groups, because we have a large pocket of students that have some skill gaps that we got to close up so that they can achieve higher scores and grow much faster at a faster rate, I would say.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Are there any additional questions?
Nope.
Okay, that's good.
All right, so here our timeline for the Go Team meetings. So in fall 2021, in fall, strategic plan was made. We are currently, this is a little bit ahead, September to December. We are reviewing our progress and current strategic plans and developing our 2025 to 2030 school strategic plan. So thinking long-term ahead, where we want to be as a school, where we want to see our students get to, which I think a lot of our conversations today are going to get to us to where we need to be. Are there any questions?
No.
All right, so this next activity I think is going to be essential to our next steps. We want to make sure that we have all stakeholder engagement, including parents, including partners, families, just making sure everyone is heard and being part of this. We're going to do an activity where we're going to focus on inform, input, and invite. When we're talking about inform, we're thinking about how can we keep families in the loop. We want to think of creative strategies, creative things. For input, we want to think about how are we going to get their ideas and feedback. Oftentimes, I feel like we fall into the trap of just giving information and keeping it moving, and we're not always listening. And how to invite them, the families and our stakeholders, into the schools, into the work, not just us speaking to them either. So here we have a chart I can be typing in as we go. Please feel free to unmute yourself and share any ideas. However, please indicate where we are answering so that way I can ensure that I am typing into the correct box.
Mr. Torres, we did kind of go over this a little bit in our last meeting.
Oh, we did,
So
correct.
if you can open up minutes
The
from our
minutes.
last meeting, you can check out that graph that's so nicely filled in, and we can discuss those things that we suggested last meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so right here for families, we have for inform, we wrote keeping communication open with emails, calling, post memos, surveys, and virtual office hours. Specifically for parents, Go Team should be tabled at school events to be more visible. Is there any other things that would be added to this?
No.
All right, how about for students? School community meetings and pod meetings amongst grade levels, monitoring and afternoon announcements. All right, I'll give a pause. Feel free to add anything afterwards. For staff, keeping communication open with surveys and virtual office hours, specifically for staff. For community, keeping community open with emails, calling, post memos, surveys, and virtual office hours, specifically for community members. Now for input, when it comes to families first. PTA and check-in calls, feedback, portals, and surveys. Family nights, work with parent liaison to increase family participation. Have iPads available to collect input from parents during school events. For students, student-teacher conferences and conversations. For staff, temperature checks and PLCs, staff meetings. And for community, community events and partnerships. For invitations, parent volunteers could come in literacy and math nights. For students, establish a student government to support student voice, peer tutorial and support, student teacher assistance. Staff, PLCs and supporting staff, community outreach and neighborhood visits. Are there any edits that anyone would like to make?
Could you go back up? Yep, right there. Staff, keeping communication open with surveys and virtual office hours, specifically for staff. We may, I don't know, I'm thinking this through, but as you was reading, I was thinking about how busy Dr. Shakir is, how busy, like, we have Tuesdays and Wednesdays are already dedicated, right, to after school, and how feasible virtual office hours would be. And maybe with that, if we keep virtual office hours, maybe like a Google form or survey that you or Dr. Shakir creates or whoever, right? Where, and it's not necessarily a survey, but more so like if you miss it, if you miss the virtual office hours, you have a way to communicate and share your questions or your thoughts or ideas. And I know we have surveys, but surveys can kind of be black and white versus just an open forum like, hey, this week, what concerns or what, blind spots or what more do you want to know about? Kind of leaving it open-ended would be very beneficial, I think. So
I like
maybe
that idea. And we could even put it into our weekly newsletter that we send out to staff. So that way people could ask questions to Dr. Shakir.
But they can, because if staff is reading the newsletter and signing off on it,
Oh, it does happen.
there's a question that asks, do you have any burning questions for this week? And so when I check it, most often people, for those that are adhering to the policy of signing off, but for those who are signing off, most times you don't have people asking questions, but we can create a flyer that I can definitely add to the newsletter that would hopefully prompt some individuals to ask those questions if they have them. And then the next question I have too is, like, if we were to hold virtual office hours, do you think that as a staff, these would be hours, like, would the staff want to talk to instructional coaches, APs? Like, do you think that it should be something where it should be like a rotating schedule?
That's a great question, Dr. Shakir.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, you want to make sure that the time is beneficial on both ends. Because I don't want to tie up somebody sitting at a computer for a certain amount of time if they don't necessarily have a question that that needs to be answered. So I think maybe, but what we could do is maybe post check the staff, because we have extended leadership tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's something that we can bring up to the staff tomorrow.
That's a great idea.
I made a note, so because that's a good question.
All right.
Okay.
And let me put something here.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. And then we could hash out details during our staff meeting and see how everything. Is there anything else anyone would like to add?
Nope.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
All right. So the next item will be, we will now move on to our information items.
Okay.
Our first will be the principal's report.
Okay, so we have officially closed out. If you go to the next slide, Mr. Torres, we've officially closed out the first 10 to 15 days where schools are being monitored for attendance for leveling purposes. So I have some leveling updates related to just general full-time FTE or full-time equivalent budgeting for Hollis. Go to the next slide if you would. So based off of projected enrollment, so each year when schools are given a budget, there is a projected enrollment that the district demographer generally calculates based off of trend patterns happening within a respective community. So the projected enrollment at the start of the school year for Hollis was projected to be around 544 students. At the end of the 15-day count, which was August 22nd, our enrollment was actually at 575, which was good for the school because it's a positive. Because anytime you fall under your projected enrollment, that means that you are subject to having the district come back and recoup funds that they initially front loaded to schools at the beginning of the year, or what's known as your holdback funds. The district can come back and recoup those. So since we made the actual projected enrollment, the school did not lose any money from our FTE funds. There was a difference of 31 students as of August 22nd. As of today's date, we actually have a school-wide enrollment of 624 students. So as you can see, unfortunately, they only do leveling once the first 10 to 15 days of the school year. But as you can see, as a school in comparison to other schools within the cluster as well as district, the good thing is that Hollis's enrollment is not under enrolled. And so as a result of the 15-day count of enrollment, the school earned an additional $305,000, $305,659, and go to which equates for our full-time equivalent funds. And so with those funds, principals have the autonomy to look at their budgets and needs to kind of see how they want to allocate those funds. And so looking at it from a personnel changes, I did decide to go ahead and add a full-time school business manager that's going to come on board and help handle a lot of the operational things across the K-8 band, which would give me more time to get involved in the instructional piece, because it's really hard when you're K-8 trying to balance operations and instruction. And based off of where we are and based off of our school-wide performance trends, we need to make sure that we have a really focused eye on instruction, trying to help build teacher capacity. Also in alignment with our school-wide goal of trying to reconnect and engage our community stakeholders at a higher level, we started the year with a hourly parent liaison, which was budgeted based off of constraint factors from last year's budget, but based off of our enrollment this year, we do have an opportunity to bring on a full-time parent liaison. So we will have a full-time parent liaison, which is going to be a good thing for the school, because that person can be solely dedicated 40 hours a week on various initiatives focused on increasing parental engagement, working with some of our key community stakeholders, particularly around trying to establish the PTA at Hollis, which is something that I know was an area that our community members want to establish. So our parent liaison, that individual in that role, will help to work in that capacity, as well as help to provide other resources for our community, for our families in our communities, to help make sure that they have access to different things that they need, so that they can be well, so that their children can come to school and be focused on learning. We are also adding an additional special education teacher based off of our FTE and enrollment. We do have a candidate that we are waiting on HR to onboard. So that individual will be joining us soon and joining our middle school team. So hopefully that will be more support for our subgroup students, our special ed students, and it would lessen some of the strain and constraints that our current special education teachers have in terms of servicing students. And then we're also going to add an additional kindergarten paraprofessional to help, because our kindergarten classes, we started off the year very low, and then we had a lot of kindergarten students show up, which is typically what happens in most instances if your school does not generally have a kinder roundup in the spring. And so just to make sure that with kindergarten kids coming to school, first time real experience for many of them, and to help lessen the load with the teachers, we want to make sure that everybody has a paraprofessional. Also looking at non-personnel changes that are going into effect. I put aside monies this year for teacher stipends. I have a plan that I presented to my cluster soup of how I want to invite certain staff members and teachers the opportunity to kind of do some data analysis on off-contract time, but I don't want to ask teachers to do that if I don't have a way to compensate them. So we do have some monies put aside that will be forthcoming throughout this year for teachers to actually have some stipends to actually dig a little bit deeper into their data. Another thing that I put money aside for is making sure that we have materials and supplies. Because I want to make sure that teachers have what they have what they need, and I don't want staff members going out buying things with their personal monies. So we have monies put aside to make sure that we have the necessary supplies that will allow you to actually teach and do your job. Instructional equipment and furniture, there have been monies put aside just to make sure that we are able to get the necessary equipment we need in the building. Like, for example, one of the things that we need to push this year is our Lexiles. So one piece of equipment that we're going to purchase is a school-wide book vending machine. Some classrooms needed various types of furniture, rugs, things of that nature. They haven't had that replaced in some time. So we have an opportunity to have some funds put aside to make sure that we address some of those needs for teachers. There are funds put aside for web-based subscriptions and various licenses. One of the things that we purchased school-wide this year was iReady, which is a resource for our teachers to me will kind of help them with that differentiation piece as they are planning lessons for their students. But more importantly, iReady was a resource that I wanted to get for the students, because as they are at home, when they take the initial diagnostic assessment, each student receives their own individualized learning plan. So when they're at home or during break times, when they're not in school with us, students have an opportunity to work on those assignments at his or her level, and it helps them to build their confidence and hopefully increase their mastery as they move towards proficiency. And then lastly, I set aside monies for contracted services for instruction. And so what that looks like this year is we have various consultants coming in providing in-house professional development. We've had Metro Risa come in once this year to work with our teachers on unpacking the math learning plans. We are going to bring them back in again this year. I do have a behavior specialist contractor coming in on the 7th to meet with our PBIS leadership team on really making sure that everybody understands the construct of how PBIS needs to be rolled out. How do we do this effectively so that it's not a program that's perceived as just a rewards program for students, but rather it's a program that has a healthy balance between making sure that we have systems and protocols in place around teaching the appropriate behaviors and also rewarding students who are meeting the expectations that we set forth as a school. So those are how the funds will be allocated, the additional funds that we earned this year, just to make sure that we are sustaining things as a school and that teachers overall, we have the resources in place that we need. And so the funds and resources have been allocated to support ongoing professional learning and ensuring that teachers have the needed supplies necessary to provide quality instruction to students. The addition of the full-time parent liaison will also help support the increasing of that family engagement effort. And then also with the IEPs, because the school last year received an audit finding. And so one of the areas that we have to make sure that we stay focused on is special education and making sure that we stay in compliance. So it's good that we were able to earn the additional special ed teacher, as well as through some of our funding through non-personnel changes for our special ed teachers. We're able to buy them resources that are specific for special ed that can help meet the needs of their students. And so overall, that is how our budget looks thus far this year. We also have one additional budget. I'll be able to have more updates at our next meeting. I just submitted a proposal back to the district and state to request some additional funding because I want to have funding for teachers to have half a day of professional learning. I think that it's important that teachers plan sufficiently, have some space and opportunity to do that, as well as get some additional supplies and materials that we need as a school. So hopefully by the time we have our October meeting, I would have heard back from the state on whether or not these funds have been approved, and then I'll be able to share out with you how we will allocate these additional resources as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next thing that's happening. So as you all know, APS has APS Forward 2040, which is reshaping the future of education. A part of that reshaping is looking at our school district collectively, looking at school-wide enrollments, looking at facilities, repurposing, all of that good stuff that all of you all are very much so aware of. And so as you know, last week, principals were informed of changes that would be happening at their buildings. So I did receive notification last week that the proposal, and I want to stress the word proposal because nothing has been finalized through board approval, but the proposal that has been put in place in the final revision for the district's plan for repurposing is to, in terms of Hollis, moving all of our 6th through 8th grade students over to H.J. Russell. And there are various factors that the district has considered in terms of why this is a move that they think is feasible, that they want to move forward with, not next school year, but tentatively the 27-28 school year. And so as a part of this initiative that the district is hosting, there will be a school-based meeting this Thursday at Hollis. Thursday at 3 o'clock, the district is coming over to talk to our staff to just kind of fill you in on the district's proposal that they will be presenting to the board at some point in the near future, but also talk to the staff around what does that mean for our teachers here at Hollis that currently serve in the spaces of 6 through 8. Our deputy superintendent who's over that, Dr. Bradshaw, came by the school on Friday of last week and actually came and met with me for a few minutes. And so one of the things I shared with him is that I think it's important that when we have this conversation that we talk to the teachers about what does that look like? Do teachers automatically move to the new site location? Do they re-interview? Just general things that teachers want to know as we are preparing for this, even though we know that if this does go through, we're looking at a year away. It's not going to happen in the immediate next school year, but that following school year. But I still think that it's important for teachers to know what those logistical pieces will look like. And he agreed and said that that's a part of that conversation. So the district will be here at 3 to talk to the staff and give you also an opportunity to ask some of those questions that you have about the proposed changes, but also the community meeting will be held at 6 o'clock, same date, this Thursday, in the cafeteria, so that the community has an opportunity to hear the district stance and the rationale for the proposed changes, as well as have an opportunity for input. And so we've pushed this information out to our community members via school messenger. I've asked our parent liaison, Ms. Burnett, to pass these flyers out to our families via the carpool lane. So I definitely encourage all school stakeholders to take part in this meeting so that you can be a part of this conversation, because it is something that possibly has a direct impact on Hollis as a school moving forward. And then lastly, this week we have just a couple of events happening this week. Of course, we have our homecoming court, which I'm excited to see. This will be my first time seeing the rollout of homecoming here at Hollis for our middle school students. So I know that they are excited as they are campaigning for our homecoming king and queen this year. And then we also have an initiative on Wednesday. Wednesday is National Walk Your Kids to School Day. So our assistant principal, our behavior specialists are working on some logistics for making it fun for the kids as they come into school this Wednesday, mostly for our walkers. And this is information that we've shared out with our families as well. So hopefully we'll see a lot of students hopefully walk into school on Wednesday with their parents in the morning. And then our homecoming game for the Washington cluster, since this is our homecoming week, is actually coming up this Saturday. I think at 12:30, we will have our homecoming game for the Washington cluster, and it's going to be at Henderson Stadium, which is at the Midtown High School.
Are there any questions?
No question.
Does anyone have any announcements? We have reached the end of our agenda. Is there any additional business at this time?
Nope.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
I second it.
All in favor? Excuse me, please say aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed, please
Aye.
say nay. Any abstentions? Please say abstain. Meeting is adjourned. It is now 6:42 p.m. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.